What if I told you that silent films weren't silent at all? They screamed with rebellion. Before Hollywood learned to play it safe, filmmakers were breaking every rule in the book. They turned passion into art, fear into beauty, and shock into box office gold. These movies didn't whisper about daring ideas, they shouted them in flickering black and white. So, get ready to explore the films that proved boldness didn't begin in color, it began in silence. Number 15, Eroticon, 1920. Before the word romantic comedy even existed, there was Eroticon, a Czech film so daring it made love triangles look like scientific experiments. Directed by Gustav Machati, it followed a young woman caught between affection, curiosity, and consequence, themes rarely touched on in polite cinema. Audiences in 1920 were stunned by its honesty. Here was a story that treated attraction not as sin or scandal, but as something human, flawed, and full of choices. Machati's storytelling was revolutionary. He used long, lingering close-ups that captured emotions instead of melodrama, making Eroticon feel startlingly modern. The characters weren't punished for desire, which outraged conservative critics. In Prague, the film drew packed houses, while censors in America demanded entire scenes be removed for being too natural. That phrase alone shows how much it rattled people. What makes Eroticon remarkable isn't just what it showed, but how it showed it. Machati used mirrors, shadows, and subtle gestures to communicate what words couldn't. It felt real, messy, emotional, alive. The movie's boldness came not from shock, but from empathy. It suggested that morality and humanity weren't always the same thing. For audiences of the time, that was enough to make hearts race and critics blush. Number 14, The Divine Woman, 1928. Greta Garbo made audiences believe in emotion without a single word, but The Divine Woman pushed that power to its limits. Directed by Victor Sjöström and released in 1928, it told the story of a country girl who flees to Paris and rises through the theater world while torn between ambition and loyalty. It was inspired by the life of French actress Sarah Bernhardt, a bold choice for an era that preferred its women obedient and silent. Garbo's performance was pure electricity. She played Lucienne, a woman caught between her heart and her hunger for independence, giving the role an intensity that shocked even seasoned critics. Sjöström filmed scenes of backstage realism and city glamour that felt decades ahead of Hollywood's polish. Rumors quickly spread that the studio had gone too far. Some reviewers called the film dangerously modern, and MGM grew uneasy about its sympathetic portrayal of a woman defying every social rule. When sound arrived, the studio shelved most silent negatives, and tragedy struck. Almost the entire film was lost in a vault fire, leaving only a single 9-minute reel. Yet even in fragments, Garbo's gaze cuts through time. The Divine Woman is cinema's ghost of freedom, a reminder that daring ideas sometimes burn too bright to survive. It stands as one of the boldest and most haunting missing treasures of the silent era. Number 13, The Love of Jean Ney, 1927. G.W. Pabst didn't make safe movies, he made confrontations on film. The Love of Jean Ney blended politics, betrayal, and forbidden attraction in post-war Europe, turning a love story into a storm of espionage and emotion. Released in 1927, the film dared to mix passion with realism in ways few directors attempted. Pabst, known for his sharp social eye, refused to glorify romance. Instead, he showed it colliding with ideology. Jean Ney, the daughter of a French diplomat, falls for a Bolshevik spy amid revolution and chaos. It wasn't just a love story, it was a mirror to a fractured world. Audiences expecting escapism were met with stark lighting, handheld intimacy, and characters who felt startlingly real. The film's frank tone and raw emotions clashed with what censors expected from respectable cinema. Some countries trimmed scenes of romantic closeness, while others objected to its sympathy toward both sides of the political divide. But The Love of Jean Ney endured because of Brigitte Helm's intense performance and Pabst's unflinching direction. His camera didn't judge, it observed. The result was a movie that questioned loyalty, ideology, and the fine line between devotion and destruction. Pabst proved once again that silence didn't mean safety, it meant power. Number 12, The Phantom Carriage, 1921. Imagine A Christmas Carol, rewritten by a poet who believed in shadows. That's The Phantom Carriage, directed by Victor Sjöström, a haunting Swedish masterpiece that redefined how film could portray guilt and redemption. Released in 1921, it introduced audiences to the terrifying idea that the last soul to die each year becomes the driver of death's carriage for the next. The film combined ghostly visuals with moral storytelling in a way that felt revolutionary. Sjöström used double exposure effects unheard of at the time to make spirits appear transparent and hauntingly real. Its realism made the supernatural believable, which deeply unsettled early audiences. At its heart, The Phantom Carriage is about regret and the chance to change. The lead character's journey from cruelty to compassion unfolds with quiet power. The film's imagery, from the carriage wheels rolling through mist to the spectral figures gliding over waves, still looks astonishing today. When it first premiered, critics praised its artistry, but warned that it was too grim for public taste. Yet its influence reached across the globe. Ingmar Bergman later called it the film that made him want to become a director. Boldness doesn't always come from outrage. Sometimes it comes from holding up a mirror to the human spirit and daring people to look. Number 11. Man with a Movie Camera, 1929. Some films tell stories. Others rewrite how storytelling works. Man with a Movie Camera did both without a single line of dialogue. Directed by Dziga Vertov, this Soviet experiment from 1929 wasn't meant to entertain. It was designed to revolutionize what film could be. And it did. Vertov shot everyday life factories, families, city streets, and turned it into a hypnotic rhythm of movement and energy. He used fast cuts, split screens, double exposures, and camera tricks that audiences had never seen before. There was no plot, no stars, no inner titles, just the camera itself becoming the main character. Critics didn't know what to make of it. Some called it chaotic. Others called it genius. Censors were baffled. But Vertov wasn't trying to please anyone. His goal was to show that cinema could create truth through motion, that editing could build emotion even without words. Today, Man with a Movie Camera is studied in every film school on Earth. But back then, it felt like an alien transmission. It celebrated humanity's pace, invention, and creativity while quietly hinting at the mechanical future ahead. It's bold because it risked being misunderstood and ended up inventing the language of modern film. Number 10. The Unknown, 1927. If you think modern thrillers get intense, The Unknown will change your mind. Directed by Todd Browning, this circus-set drama from 1927 stars Lon Chaney as a criminal hiding in plain sight, posing as an armless knife thrower to escape the law. What unfolds is a claustrophobic study of obsession, deception, and sacrifice that pushed silent cinema to emotional extremes. Chaney, known as the Man of a Thousand Faces, delivers one of his most disturbing performances here. He trained for weeks to perform without using his arms, strapping them to his torso and manipulating objects with his feet. The dedication shows. His every movement feels unnatural, desperate, human. The story's power lies in how much it hides. Every smile, every close-up carries tension. Audiences in 1927 weren't prepared for it. Critics called it gruesome, while others hailed it as genius. Censors demanded cuts to scenes they thought too unsettling. Behind the spectacle, Browning was crafting something deeper. A film about how far a person would go for love and how self-destruction can wear a mask of devotion. When sound arrived, The Unknown was forgotten for decades until rediscovered in the 1960s. Today, it feels ahead of its time, raw, psychological, and deeply human. Browning proved that terror isn't always in what you see, it's in what you imagine when silence falls. Number 9. The Scarlet Letter, 1926. Greta Garbo didn't need words to scandalize a nation. In The Scarlet Letter, her expressive eyes did all the talking. MGM took a massive gamble adapting Nathaniel Hawthorne's novel, a story drenched in moral judgment, and somehow turned it into a heartfelt human drama. The risk paid off, and nearly got the film banned. Released in 1926, the movie tells the story of Hester Prynne, a woman ostracized by her community for breaking strict social codes. MGM's publicity promised restraint, but Garbo's performance was too powerful to be contained. She made Hester's courage and tenderness feel real, even under layers of shame and symbolism. That realism unnerved moral watchdogs. Religious organizations in America tried to block the film before it was even released. Studio head Irving Thalberg reportedly negotiated personally with church leaders to allow its screening, assuring them it would be respectful. What audiences got instead was empathy. Garbo's quiet dignity and Victor Sjöström's direction turned judgment into compassion. The result was one of MGM's most beautiful silent dramas, a film that dared to defend the individual against collective hypocrisy. Even a century later, The Scarlet Letter stands as proof that true boldness sometimes looks like quiet defiance. It didn't shout rebellion, it simply refused to bow its head. Number 8. The Blue Bird, 1918. Don't let the title fool you. The Blue Bird wasn't a children's fantasy, it was an existential dream disguised as one. Directed by Maurice Tourneur in 1918, this film took audiences on a surreal journey through heaven, memory, and the afterlife, long before such ideas were safe for screens. It's often called the other Wizard of Oz, darker, stranger, and far more haunting. The story follows two children searching for the mystical blue bird of happiness, but their adventure becomes a meditation on life and mortality. Tourneur's visuals were breathtaking for their time. Glowing forests, transparent spirits, and elaborate glass sets that shimmered like hallucinations. Audiences had never seen such craftsmanship. What startled people wasn't the fantasy, it was the mood. The film's dream logic felt unsettling. It hinted that joy and sorrow were inseparable and that innocence always fades. Critics in 1918 praised its beauty but called it too mysterious for young minds. Tourneur's message was quiet but profound. Happiness isn't found in magic. It's found in seeing the ordinary with wonder. In an era obsessed with moral lessons, The Blue Bird dared to be ambiguous. That ambiguity, that refusal to simplify life's mysteries, is what makes it timeless. The film proved that even before the Roaring '20s, cinema was already whispering about deeper truths. Number 7. The Wind, 1928. Few films have ever captured isolation like The Wind. Lillian Gish stars as a woman sent to live in the desolate plains of the American West, where the endless wind becomes both her enemy and her mirror. Released in 1928, this film didn't just depict nature, it made it a living force. Director Victor Sjöström turned sandstorms into emotion. Each gust feels like a thought, each silence like a scream. Gish's performance is extraordinary, restrained, terrified, and achingly real. Filmed in the Mojave Desert, she endured real storms that cut her skin and filled her eyes with dust. The realism is staggering. Audiences were shocked by the film's bleakness. MGM executives panicked after test screenings demanding a softer ending to avoid upsetting viewers. But the damage, or brilliance, was already done. The Wind captured the unraveling of a mind pushed beyond endurance. It wasn't about madness. It was about isolation, fear, and strength colliding. Censors objected to its intensity. Critics were divided, calling it either a masterpiece or unbearable. Decades later, it's regarded as one of silent cinema's greatest achievements. The Wind proved that silence could howl louder than sound, and that sometimes the most terrifying storms happen within. Number 6. The Seashell and the Clergyman, 1928. Before Salvador Dalí or Luis Buñuel shocked Paris, a woman named Germaine Dulac beat them to it. The Seashell and the Clergyman premiered in 1928 and instantly caused chaos. It's now recognized as the first true surrealist film, a fever dream of obsession, power, and imagination that baffled everyone who saw it. Based on a script by writer Antonin Artaud, the film follows a clergyman tormented by his thoughts and desires expressed through wildly symbolic images. Mirrors melt, faces distort, and logic disappears entirely. Dulac's direction transformed emotion into movement. She treated film like poetry instead of narrative. When it premiered in London, the British Board of Film Censors banned it outright, calling it meaningless, immoral, and mad. That line alone became a badge of honor. Parisian audiences used to polite dramas didn't know what to make of it. Yet beneath the confusion lay brilliance. Dulac used dream imagery to explore control, identity, and imagination years before surrealism had a name. Critics now see The Seashell and the Clergyman as the moment cinema discovered the unconscious mind. It's strange, beautiful, and endlessly debated. Dulac didn't just make a movie. She opened a doorway into visual freedom that countless artists would later walk through. In 1928, that was beyond bold. It was revolutionary. Number 5. A Woman of Affairs, 1928. Greta Garbo made an art form out of silence, but A Woman of Affairs let her say everything without words. Released in 1928, this MGM drama pushed moral boundaries under the guise of sophistication. Based on a book that was banned in multiple countries, the story centers on a woman condemned by society for living by her own choices. The studio changed names and softened dialogue, but the meaning was crystal clear. This was rebellion in a gown. Garbo's character, Diana Merrick, was unlike any heroine of her time. She wasn't punished for being independent, she was punished for being honest. Every frame of her performance radiated defiance, from her quiet smiles to the scenes of heartbreak that censors tried to edit down. When the British Board of Film Censors saw the first cut, they demanded heavy revisions. MGM obliged, sort of. Instead of deleting scenes, they reshot them in ways that made the meaning even more powerful. Critics were split. Some called it dangerous. Others hailed it as modern. What everyone agreed on was Garbo's power. Even in silence, she dominated the screen with emotion that felt decades ahead of its time. A Woman of Affairs wasn't just bold for what it showed, it was bold for what it refused to apologize for. In an era of judgment, Garbo made courage look elegant. Number 4. Babyface, 1933. Pre-code cut. Before the Hays Code slammed the door on creative freedom, Babyface blew it wide open. Though released just after 1930, it was filmed before the code took full effect, and that's what makes it legendary. Barbara Stanwyck stars as Lily Powers, a woman who decides the world has taken enough from her and climbs the social ladder on her own terms. The dialogue was shockingly direct for its time, and even today, the restored pre-code version feels startlingly modern. Warner Brothers executives panicked when censors saw early cuts. The film was temporarily banned until entire scenes were rewritten and reshot. But even after the edits, Stanwyck's performance carried an unstoppable energy. She portrayed ambition as survival turning morality on its head. Instead of being punished for ambition, her character was humanized by it. Audiences in 1933 were stunned and fascinated. Some critics accused the studio of glamorizing manipulation, while others praised it as social realism. The truth lies somewhere in between. Babyface showed how double standards shaped women's lives in a world that judged them for playing the same game men did. It became one of the most controversial and most copied films of the early 30s. Today, historians see it as the final spark of pre-code daring before Hollywood went silent under censorship. Stanwyck didn't just play a bold character, she defined what boldness meant. Number 3. Greed, 1924. Erich von Stroheim was called the man you had to stop. Greed proved why. Released in 1924, this film was once 9 hours long, a monumental, obsessive adaptation of Frank Norris's novel McTeague. Stroheim filmed in blazing desert heat, insisting on real conditions, real sweat, and real exhaustion. He wanted the movie to feel lived in, and it did, maybe too much. When MGM saw the original cut, panic ensued. The studio demanded massive edits, slashing it down to just over 2 hours. The lost footage, reportedly destroyed, has since become one of cinema's great tragedies. Even in its shortened form, Greed was unlike anything audiences had ever seen. It portrayed ordinary people consumed by obsession and money until their humanity rotted away. Critics were divided. Some found it unbearable. Others saw genius. The imagery gold, glinting in desert sand faces, hardened by sun and greed, felt brutally real. Stroheim's uncompromising vision ended his Hollywood career, but cemented his legend. The boldness of Greed wasn't in spectacle, but in truth. It forced viewers to confront the ugliness inside human desire, something polite cinema had always avoided. Every restored frame still feels alive, raw, and untamed. Stroheim's masterpiece didn't just tell a story, it haunted one. Number 2. The Blue Angel, 1930. Marlene Dietrich didn't just enter cinema with The Blue Angel, she set it on fire. Directed by Joseph von Sternberg and released in 1930, this German drama transformed the cabaret stage into a battlefield of pride and passion. It follows a stern professor who loses control of his life after falling for a magnetic performer named Lola Lola, played by Dietrich, with smoky charm and unstoppable poise. For audiences used to tidy morals, this was chaos wrapped in glamour. Dietrich's performance was bold, playful, and defiant. She didn't play a villain or a victim, she played power itself. The film's visual style was equally daring, with deep shadows, reflections, and lingering close-ups that felt almost hypnotic. When it premiered, German critics were scandalized. Some called it immoral. Others saw it as a mirror of a society losing its innocence. American distributors released a censored version trimming scenes they thought were too risque, but even edited, Dietrich's aura was untouchable. The Blue Angel launched her international career and marked the end of the silent era's restraint. It proved that cinema could blend sophistication with danger, and that vulnerability could coexist with dominance. For its time, that balance was unheard of. Dietrich didn't just play Lola Lola, she became the symbol of freedom every censor feared. Number 1. A Fool There Was, 1915. Before vampires ever had fangs, A Fool There Was gave the world a new kind of predator, one armed only with a stare. Released in 1915, this Fox production introduced Theda Bara as the Vamp, a mysterious woman who uses charm and wit to control the men around her. The term vamp was born here, and so was the idea of female independence as something dangerous. Audiences were both mesmerized and horrified. Bara's performance broke every expectation of womanhood on screen. She wasn't innocent, and she didn't need redemption. She was intelligent, composed, and completely aware of her power. In a time when women's roles in society were tightly controlled, that was revolutionary. Censors tried to ban the film in several cities, calling it a corrupting influence. The public disagreed. Lines around theaters stretched for blocks. A Fool There Was became one of the year's biggest hits, and Theda Bara was suddenly Hollywood's most notorious star. What made it so bold wasn't just the story, it was what it symbolized. It told audiences that desire, control, and consequence weren't reserved for men. That idea was explosive in 1915 and set the tone for decades of screen power to come. Every femme fatale that followed from Garbo to Dietrich owed something to Theda Bara's hypnotic glare. So there you have it, 15 more films that proved boldness was born long before sound. They were raw, fearless, and decades ahead of their time. Each one dared to cross a line the world wasn't ready for and paid for it in fame, controversy, or exile. But without them, modern cinema wouldn't exist. Which of these forgotten rebels surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget, courage on film never really fades.